So Unit 2, Lesson 9, compare and contrast text. So this is going to be real similar to what we just did in social studies, but we're going to be looking at text rather than, different types of visuals like, charts and graphs and things like that. So by the time we finish the lesson, we'll be able to examine text to find similarities and differences, identify each author's perspective, style, and tone. Okay, here is the audio.
When you compare and contrast texts that address similar topics, you examine all aspects of the texts to find similarities and differences. Use basic questions to gather information about the content. For example, what topics are addressed? How does each author approach the topics? Also, examine the structure of the texts. How does each author organize the information and ideas? What structural devices does each author use to achieve his or her purpose? Look for clues that show each author's perspective, style, and tone. As you examine the texts, understand that texts that seem similar may have big differences, and texts that seem different may have similarities.
So the thing that's important here about these lessons, getting on into this unit, largely this is what you're going to be asked to do when it comes time to write. You're going to be given two passages, passage A, passage B, and you're going to have to basically answer a question, which argument do you support, which passage do you support, which one's more persuasive, so forth and so on. So this is a good exercise, and the ones that we've done here recently as far as like analyzing argument and yesterday with analyzing rhetoric, and those ideas are going to help you decide, when it comes time to write, well, which argument's more persuasive, what kind of format are they using, which of these elements are they using, and then that's how you'll address that question. They're using this type of evidence, this, or they're making this type of appeal, and so forth and so on. So, and this will also help when you compare and contrast two writings. You get to see, it's a little easier than to see, their viewpoint and their style and their tone, right? Their word choices and how they are going about, making their case or writing about whatever they're writing about. So looking then here, before we get to the quiz, two pieces here, two little passages on the Peace Corps. So let's take a look. I'll go ahead and read these here, and then we'll compare and contrast each. So this first one, a speech by Sergeant Shriver. And I'll go ahead and say that this speech before the Commonwealth Club of California by R. Sergeant Shriver, 1963. Let's see here. The Peace Corps is an example of free enterprise at work. It is a working model of some of the most basic and fundamental American ideas and beliefs. First, the Peace Corps is based upon the individual, his freedom, his initiative, and his responsibility. We take Americans, give them 3 months intensive training, set them to work in a foreign land. They do not live in a group or in a barracks. They are sometimes alone in a strange village. They decide how hard they will work, what projects they will undertake, where they will travel. All right, we'll come back to the text here in a minute, the text boxes. This one from, I'm going to say it's Kikiu Binds by Michelle Graves. So this is from the Peace Corps, and this is written in 2010. So Graves, or Shriver, Sergeant Shriver is the one on top. This is Michelle Graves writing here. So the women cluck at me sympathetically and admonish the children. For all the heart I put into new tasks, building raised beds, gardening, the women know too well the ongoing struggle. Kikiu requires vigilance. The persistent grass returns to reclaim its hold on the earth as soon as a back is turned. And these women have many babies, fields to plow, boulders to move, corn to shuck and grind into flour, houses of manure and mud to build, and floors to sweep. Their heads are often down, their backs often bent. So two different perspectives on the Peace Corps. Obviously, both of these people involved with the Peace Corps. So looking at text box A, it says Shriver emphasizes the importance of individualism and supports this assertion. For example, Peace Corps members often live alone in a strange village. His perspective is from an organizer, not a participant. So that is the difference that you might see right away with the second passage. This is somebody's personal experience. So here it says Graves, a Peace Corps volunteer, writes of her experience from a participant's perspective. The use of first person pronouns can help you identify that she is writing a personal narrative to express her feelings about the topic. So that's, talking about point of view, which we've looked at before, and narrative point of view. She is writing about her personal experience. I, right? That pronoun comes into play. The former there with Sergeant Shriver talks about, basically what happens to an individual as they join the program. So that tells you something about the perspective too. So let's go on over to the quiz. Okay, there we have our two passages again. And here where it says using logic, when determining an author's style, look at specific words and sentences. For example, Shriver uses commonplace verbs such as live and decide, whereas Graves uses more expressive verbs such as cluck and admonish, right? So that lends to her personal experience. She has more descriptive words to use about her personal experience in those situations. So it's something to think about when you encounter writings like this. So let's go with Nakia off the top here. Would you mind reading question 1?
Which statement best reflects the difference in the author's styles? A, Shiver uses descriptive, colorful language, but Graves uses formal, stiff language. B, Shriver. Shriver uses poetic, uses straightforward language and simple sentences. C, Shriver uses straightforward, simple language, but Graves uses visual details and descriptive language. D, Shriver uses formal language, but Graves uses powerful, intimidating language. I would say C.
Yeah, Shriver, and it mentions this here in our piece on logic, right? Shriver uses simple terms like live and decide, and Graves, drawing on her personal experience with Peace Corps, uses those more descriptive words. So that goes with style and tone, right? Graves paints a more visual picture. She visualizes that for you by using words like that, where with her personal experience. So looking next, we have a drag and drop section. We got new. Okay, yeah, this is from different sections of those same two speeches, or one seems to be a speech. I think one's a writing. Edda, would you mind reading the Sergeant Shriver part here, that passage first?
Okay. It says they receive enough money to live, are sent to do a job for America, and are expected to do that job. We operate this way because we have faith in the American individual, his skill, and his dedication. We do it because we believe in personal responsibility, not in corporate immunity or bureaucratic protection. And this faith has been justified. Second, the Peace Corps exemplifies and even generates private enterprise. We have no organization men, no protected corporation jobs, no pensions, no coffee breaks. We place the We place a volunteer down in a new environment and say to him, see what you can come up with. And we often find that they have become the Wright brothers or Edisons or Fords of the world in which they are living.
All right, I'll read the second one here. It says, soon I croon to myself as I find a regular rhythm in my digging. I add Lesotho, Fatse, La Bontada Rona, and Fiala to my repertoire. I grow tanner and somehow fatter, although I work further for groceries than ever will in my life, an hour and a half over a mountain alongside barefooted grandmothers who carry 50-pound bags of flour on their heads. My hands crack and weather. I learn to speak the language, Sesotho, beautiful and flowing like wind through corn stalks with rivers I cross on my travels by foot to 7 villages in the valley. I explain my mission to the women in halting phrases using the words I know: softness, life. I mix the soil with air and cow manure and rake it into a fine mesh piled high. The raised bed sits a foot off the floor, buoyed by molecules of air and moisture retaining compost. Sifted light and fluffy as cake flour, it provides a home for the tender, long taproots of carrots, bulbous onions, and the fragile roots of tomatoes. On a diet of boiled corn and cabbage, children suffer and die. A small plot of earth the size of a grave, the soft soil provides space to grow foods with vitamin A and C that prevent these diseases with consequences as difficult as their names. Marasmus kwashiorkor. Okay. So the other thing I think is worth pointing out here, so Sergeant Shriver, that speech is given in 1963. And the more current one here by Michelle Graves, right? That's 2010. I think we can also see a little bit of a difference based on the time. We have a lot of, just his pronouns in the first one. So the Peace Corps at that point is probably dominated by male, members, people pursuing that Peace Corps opportunities. And then we see in 2010, a difference. So that's something else that can come into play. You'll want to take into account, is there a difference as far as time? There's a different perspective here in 1963, particularly, when we're thinking about the U.S. Patriotism is probably high at that point. We're still in the Cold War and things like that. So somebody promoting the Peace Corps may also have these sort of ideas of that American way of life, and it's very obvious that they're kind of pushing that. But we also see that in action, right? Because we see Michelle Graves, who's learning these skills and is participating alongside of these other, women in these roles. So there is sort of that individualism for her, and sort of working side by side and learning new skills. And she's also talking about the people of that region. She's not talking about other members of the Peace Corps, other U.S. organizations, or things like that. So there is, the comparison there you can make between the two is that, okay, this is what it looks like in action, and it does speak to a little bit of what Sergeant Shriver is saying based on that reading. But at the same time, there is a different focus and there is a different point of view. So let's take a look here at this drag and drop section. So first, we have Sergeant Shriver. We're going to look at the characteristics here and the statements that best describe his response or his speech, and then what is best for Graves. So let's see, we have the same. Yeah, we have 6, so we're using all of these. So right off the top, so describes the Peace Corps by providing aspects of a specific experience. Is that Sergeant Shriver or is that Michelle Graves?
Which one did you read?
So who describes the Peace Corps by using aspects of a specific experience? Is that the first passage or the second one?
Graves?
Yeah, that is Graves. That's that second passage, right? Michelle Graves. So go ahead and drag and drop that into the Graves slot. Hopefully it doesn't matter which way we do this. And then the second one, appeals to American patriotism. So which one of those passages seems to appeal more to American patriotism?
Shriver.
The first one, right? Shriver. That has that kind of language involved, right? Talks about, well, he mentions America. Michelle Graves never mentions really the United States or America or anything like that, but here he's like, they're sent to do a job for America, right? America, that's patriotism. And even ideas about what it is to be American, you know, that American individual. So definitely in the first speech there by Shriver, we get a more of a sense of this American patriotism behind the Peace Corps. Time comes into play there, right? During the Cold War, we're out there, we're trying to win the world over, hearts and minds kind of ideas in 63. Next, emphasizes that the Peace Corps represents American ideals and ingenuity. Shriver or Graves?
Shriver.
That goes along with the patriotism, right? The American ideals and ingenuity. So you could see, you know, comparing those two passages, you know, and a test-taking skill, you know, that goes along with American patriotism pretty well. Has gained knowledge and experience from the Peace Corps.
Graves.
Graves,
Shriver.
right? Talking about, you know, making compost and things like that, and just a generally new experience for someone that's an American. So has gained knowledge and experience. That goes to Graves. Then we're left with 2 here. So appeals to human sympathy.
Graves.
Graves, part of that personal experience, right? Talking about the diseases that affect children there, the poor nutrition, having a small plot of land for foods devoted with, you know, high in vitamin A and C. So that is more of an appeal to sympathy. And then that leaves, promotes the Peace Corps by providing an overview of the program. So that's more along the line of Shriver, because, you know, doesn't have personal, I mean, you know, that person may have been part of the Peace Corps, may have experience, but in this speech and talking to this Commonwealth Club, they're talking more generally about the experience. So it's more of an overview. And then we'll hit submit. Yay, we get them all to light up green, no issues there. So Shriver was an appeal to a patriotism, emphasis on the Peace Corps and American ideals, and promotes the Peace Corps by providing an overview of the program. And as you're building them, you might see, you know, that they fall in line and make sense together. So with Graves, you know, describing the Peace Corps by providing aspects of a specific experience, as a specific experience and providing their own experience, that lends itself with this person has gained knowledge and experience from the Peace Corps, right? There's a personal experience there. And that also goes along with an appeal to human sympathy because of that personal experience, because of what they saw. They have a better viewpoint on those individuals that they're helping within the Peace Corps. And that's the workbook today. 2 little questions there. So one we'll see. And hopefully you guys all got the drag and drop box, right? Anybody need to catch up there? I'm going to say everybody's good. So we'll look at the workbook. All right. And remember that when you compare and contrast 2 texts, you look for similarities and differences. Sometimes 2 texts written on similar topics or in similar genres or forms of writing may appear very similar. However, you need to dig deeper than what appears on the surface to find out whether they are as similar as they look. What we just read, perfect example, right? Both of those pieces are on the Peace Corps. They come from different eras, for one, but what is involved there? You know, the one is promoting the Peace Corps to a group, right? They're talking to a group of people, and they're talking about how that you know, appeals to patriotism, appeals to American ideas and ingenuity. Where the second one, we're getting a personal experience they're writing about, and it appeals to sympathy. In fact, you may uncover subtle differences. Authors might have a different overview of a topic, but may agree on some smaller points. Furthermore, you might find that authors engage readers in different ways, reveal differences in solutions to problems. Same thing with those Peace Corps pieces. There we saw some of what Schreiber was saying in action in Graves's experience, that they're dropped sort of in the middle of a situation and they rely on their ingenuity and themselves to make a difference. And that we kind of saw in action with Graves. And oh, yay, sports parents, hockey moms. That's our topic here to start the workbook. So let's see what it says here. Starting with sports parents and looking at our source, it comes from the postgame.com article, What Makes a Nightmare Sports Parent and What Makes a Great One by Steve Henson, 2012, Access 2013. I'm going to assume, I think most of you guys, your little ones are not of age where they've started in sports yet. But oh boy, wait till you get to that age where they start, with t-ball or little league or soccer, and just watch some of those crazy parents. Dealing with some of those last few years myself. So hundreds of college athletes were asked to think back. What is your worst memory from playing youth and high school sports? Their overwhelming response, the ride home from games with my parents. The informal survey lasted 3 decades, initiated by 2 former longtime coaches who over time became staunch advocates for the player, for the adolescent, for the child. Remember what we talked about yesterday with that repetition, right? So that's the same person they're talking about, for the player, for the adolescent, for the child. So the repeating sort of that same phrase there to add emphasis. They could have just stopped with for the player, or they could have choose for the adolescent, or they could have choose for the child. By adding all 3, they're kind of rounding out the idea of who's playing the sport, right? They are a child, they're in their adolescence. So, let's take into account how we talk to them. Hockey moms. So this is from the New England Hockey Journal column, When Did I Become That Hockey Mom? By April Bowling, 2012. She says, I always have had a special distaste for rabid sports parents. They rank right up there with spiders, crowded elevators, and runny eggs in my book of yuck. Yes, I have a book of yuck, but I digress. Rabid sports parents, you know the ones, they scream at their kids while they play, browbeat them with advice when they come off the playing field, and they coach from the stands. They also say things, I wouldn't push him so hard if he wasn't so talented and driven himself, while their kid is quietly crying because he doesn't want to practice today. So looking at A, Henson introduces the topic in an engaging way by including a question and an answer that lay the groundwork for his viewpoint. So it's an interesting question. What is the worst memory you have from playing sports in high school? And so second B here, Bowling engages the reader as well, but does so in a different way. She draws the reader in through humor and, for example, mentioning her book of yuck. So yeah, 2 different styles, right? Sort of a humor style. One is more about stating fact, or this idea of what high school athletes have dealt with. One deals more with the experience of others, right? That Henson's deals with more of the experience of others, while April Bowling's is more of her personal experience, right? So again, difference in narration there as well. Let's take a look here at the workbook. Okay, we've got our sports parents and hockey moms. And then it says, identifying an author's perspective. Look for strong words expressing the author's opinion or attitude. For example, think how the sentence would change if Bowling had used enthusiastic or passionate instead of rabid, right? Always, key in on those words, those specific words. And it's true, why would you use rabid unless you mean it? You don't throw a word around like that unless you're trying to add emphasis to the point. So yeah, enthusiastic and passionate, that is more, what we might call diplomatic. If you're writing for a different audience, you might use something like that. But if you're trying to state your strong opinion, word choice, being that specific, it's really important. Okay, so number one, Tracy, would you read question 1 for us?
Yes. Which statement best explains the author's view about sports parents? A. Henson believes that overbearing sports parents are misunderstood, but Bowen finds them entertaining. B. Both authors believe that for athletes to succeed, they need parents who are passionate about sport. C. Henson believes that successful athletes have bushy sports parents, but Bolin believes that bushy sports parents are rare. D. Both authors believe that overbearing sports parents can have a negative effect on children. B.
So D. Yeah, D, both authors believe that overbearing sports parents can have a negative effect. That is the comparison that you make between the two, right? Comparing the similarities. They both are stating there, one is saying that the children say that the ride home from a game was the worst part, signaling that encounter and engaging your parents after a game was the negative part. And then, of course, the hockey mom talking about the yuck factor of rabid fans. So D is in dog there, right? They both share that idea that sports parents suck, or at least a lot of them. So 2, what is the purpose of Henson's text? Christiana, would you mind answering number 2?
Number 2. Okay. What is the purpose of Henson's text? A.
I think it's a different passage.
Oh, what's that?
Different passage. It's a new passage.
Is it a new passage? Oh, it
Yeah.
is. Okay. Do this where they'll throw the same writers in there. Okay, so let's read. Do you mind reading the first passage then?
Okay. Sports parents. There it is from the months of babies who grew up to become college and professional athletes. Whether your child is just beginning T-ball or is a travel team soccer or star or survived the cast for the high school varsity, parent takes care. The vast majority of dad and mom that makes ride home from games miserable for their children to do inadvertent. Please, what's the word?
Oh, let's see. Yeah.
The inadvertent, is it paragraph 2? The first line.
They aren't what's typical? Oh, I'm sorry. Inadvertently. Yeah. Inadvertently.
Okay, inadvertently. They aren't. I'm sorry. I don't know what is wrong.
I'll go ahead. I'll take over. It sounds like you got some issues going on there. Take care of that one. All right. So they aren't stereotypical horrendous sports parents. The ones who scream at referees, loudly second guess coaches, or berate their children. They are well-intentioned folks who can't help but initiate conversation about the contest before the sweat has dried on their child's uniform. In the moments after a game, win or lose, kids desire distance. They make a rapid transition from athlete back to child, and they'd prefer if parents transition from spectator or in many instances from coach back to mom and dad ASAP. So that's from that first article again that we looked at. And then hockey mom. So given my acute distaste, imagine my surprise when my inner anti-rabid sports parent alarm went off recently because of me. You got it. I was that obnoxious parent at one of Sam's games. Because I am so competitive myself, I am a big cheerleader at my kids' games, but usually I'm nothing but positive. The first thing I always say to my kids as they come off the ice or the field or the track is, I love to watch you play. You're the highlight of my day. But on this particular day, I battled with Sam to get him to the rink for his game. It was still soccer season, so I knew a lot of kids had conflicts and wouldn't be there. But in his defense, he was getting over a cold and had just wrapped up a long, overscheduled week of school and sports. Did I mention he's only 7? Anyway, I wrestled him to the rink as my 9-year-old hung on me and complained endlessly. The rink was too cold. She wanted a snack. She hated hockey. My husband stuck his earbuds in and listened to the Patriots game. Their blown fourth quarter lead might have contributed to my loss of control, while Sam skated like his socks were filled with concrete. Time and time again, he turned over the puck. The goalie got assaulted with multiple breakaways. My daughter kept whining, and then I started to boil over. So, yeah, considering that, right? Personal experience based on sort of this idea of some data, and let's take a look here. So let's go to Grace for number 2.
Okay. What is the purpose of Hansen test? To explain how even well-intentioned sports parent can have a negative effect on children. B, to entertain with stories about parents who are passionate about sports. C, to describe the problems on the way to becoming a college athlete. And D, to persuade student athletes to discuss their problems with their parents. A.
Yeah, right. To explain how and why even well-intentioned sports parents can have a negative effect on children. So number 2 is A. 3, got the same passage. Yes, this is the same one. Double checking there. So how about Sasha Gay? Would you like to read number 3 for us?
How are the authors' perspectives similar? Both believe that A, coaches should limit parental involvement in youth sports. B, youth sports culture cannot change. C, as long as parents do not berate their children during games, no harm is done. And D, attentive and concerned parents can become overzealous and affect their children. Is it D?
D, yeah. Yeah, both pointed that out, right? On the first side, it's like, switch back to your parent mode before your kids get in the car. Be a parent, not a coach. And then, the mom, the hockey mom here is stating how, having sort of a bad day, you're wrangling your kids and everything, something we can relate to, that could wind you up when it comes to your kids' sports, and you let your emotions sort of take over. So D is in dog, even for well-intentioned parents. 3 is D. Same passage here for 4. Nakia, how about taking care of 4 here? No, we might have to come back here. Let's go to Grace. Grace, can you take number 4?
Okay. Which statement best explains the difference in the artist styles? A, Hansen uses vivid, poetic descriptions, and Bolin uses formal, academic language. B, Hansen uses logical reasoning, but Bolin uses amusing references and tells a personal narrative. C. Henson uses inspirational, emotional language, but Bolling uses fact-based reasoning and sophisticated vocabulary. And D. Henson uses engaging anecdotes, but Bolling uses motivational terms. B.
E for 4. Yes. Right. Hinton's kind of using logic, why parents might react this way, how that affects their kids. And Bowling, as we see, right, that the personal narrative, that first person point of view with her story. So that's comparing and contrasting again, right? How are they different? Well, the one thing we could say is there's the point of view, right? From the perspective that they're taking. Hinton has used this question that he's asked, former school athletes, what was the worst experience, and they say, so he kind of reasons through that. Bowling, on the other hand, using that first person perspective. See, that's how, you could put very similar, and then they agree, right? But they have a different point of view that they're coming from when explaining the way they feel about these things. And 5, let's see, do not close the doors on the arts. Okay, 2 big passages here. I'll go ahead and take the first one, and I'll throw it out to somebody else here for the second one. So let's go ahead and look here. So this is Mallory Riley, parent and local business owner. So this seems to be a letter. And so it says, do not close the doors on the arts. Dear members of the Board of Education. So this is somebody writing to their Board of Education. I am writing in opposition to the proposed restructure. I also want to point out here, this is something that we would very likely see as a writing prompt, right? So this really speaks to what you're going to do as far as writing goes. So dear members of the Board of Education, I am writing in opposition to the proposed restructuring and closing of Lau High School of the Visual and Performing Arts. This institution has been the soul of downtown for 52 years and has seen many of its students go on to professional success, in large part because of the opportunities and flexibility it provides. Smaller and larger cities maintain similar schools that nurture talent and offer opportunities for gifted teens to develop at their own pace and to combine professional and academic responsibilities. Actors such as Jennifer Aniston, Al Pacino, and Robert De Niro attended the High School of Performing Arts in New York. The model of Lowell High School and Lowell graduates now work in film, theater, and design. Imagine these celebrities and others as teenagers with special gifts that did not lend themselves to traditional classrooms. Such students need accommodation for special training, auditioning, rehearsing, and performing, in addition to academic subjects. To combine Lowell with a traditional suburban school is as much a disservice as moving it, limiting access to the downtown locations. Attending Lowell, as it has been and where it has been, has enabled student artists to connect with other artists, develop their skills, and realize their potentials, not only as performers, but as the people in our society who tell our stories. Forge the connections between past and present, envision the future, and weave a sense of cultural identity. Moreover, the closing of the school is a bad economic decision. Nearby restaurants, coffee shops, bookstores, and theaters benefit from their proximity to the school. Staff, students, residents, and visitors frequent these establishments and support the local economy. Without the school, a good part of downtown will die. I urge you to reconsider your decision, not only to honor the school's cultural service and current economic value, but to preserve opportunities for future generations of artists. And again, that's Mallory Riley, parent and local business owner. How about Etta? Would you like to read the second passage here, what we can rely on?
Okay. What we can rely on. I believe in arts and culture. Excuse me. I believe in arts and culture, and I believe that far from being luxury items, they are a necessity in our lives as individuals and as nations. Countries may go to war, but it is culture that unites us. The words of a great writer, the style of a legendary dancer, the brilliance of our favorite actors, display in bringing life to their roles. A Mozart piano concerto,
Mhm.
the endless mystery of Mona Lisa's smile, the flickering images on celluloid, and the countless stories they have told. Here in Shakespeare's country, this should be understood more clearly, perhaps, than anywhere else in the world, that the arts inspire, uplift, challenge, stimulate our conversations, drive our debates, and remain in our memories. What I have come to recognize in my 6 years of fundraising for the Old Vic Theatre in London is that those of us who make an argument for supporting the arts have not used the economic impact of arts and culture as their centerpiece of our appeals as much as we should. Too often we focus solely on the social aspects of what we can achieve or the artistic merits. These are important and valid, but I believe we should change tack at this time. Instead of apologetically holding our hat in our hands, we should cite the economic success of what is called show business. We can do better by recognizing how much our cultural life contributes to the health of communities across our nation and indeed around the world. Those who enjoy culture should be more aware of the financial contribution arts institutions makes to their communities. Relationships between business and the arts offer a real chance to achieve financial success, not only for each other, but also to generate income for the hotels, restaurants, and countless other businesses that populate the neighborhoods. Where cultural centers operate, I, for one, do not want to see another regeneration plan that does not have artists and culture at the heart of its offer. Without it, we are not building rounded communities, but ignoring the fabric and soul of society. And I was from the New Statements article. What we can rely on is our creativity, our inspiration, and our passion by Kevin Spacey, 2009.
All right. So I got a little ahead of myself. You're probably going to be posed with, a opposing point of views. Here we have sort of a personal, like a very local, very a small scale idea about, an arts school for high school students, and then we have something more broad about the idea of arts and culture and society and what it means. Unfortunately, it's from Kevin Spacey. Sometimes these things don't age so well, but even for not being a very guy, as we found out in more recent years, he is making a good statement here, right? And he's one that we can look at. Sometimes this stuff's like, okay, it'd probably be better if somebody other than Kevin Spacey right now was saying that. But that's something to think about. Okay, one thinking about a specific area, right? They're both talking about culture. They're talking about arts and culture and its effect, right? That's the comparison you make. Then you can look at, well, how are they different? Well, one's very specific to an area, a very specific location. One's a little broader about the community of arts and how that affects larger institutions and things like that. So let's take a look at the questions then. Tracy, how about reading question 5 for us?
What is Riley's perspective regarding the arts? A. The arts mirror popular views of contemporary life and stimulate dialogue. B. The arts are tied to periods of time and do not cross these boundaries. C. The arts create emotion bonds among generations of students. D. The arts connect the cultural past to the present and future. A.
D here. D is in dog. So let's see if we can find. So let's see here. So talking about tradition here. So to combine Lowell with the traditional, okay, that's suburban high school. attending Lowell as it has been and where it has been. It has been and where it has been has enabled students, artists to connect with other artists, develop their skills, and realize their potential not only as performers, but as the people in our society who tell our stories, forge the connections between past and present, envision the future, and weave a sense of cultural identity. So that line right there is really speaking to, this idea of connecting cultural past with present and future, right? That second paragraph. So D as in dog for number 5. Same passages, number 6. Christiana, back to you. Could you get to number 6 for us there?
Okay, number 6. Okay. What is space? Is it species?
See? Yeah.
Okay, what is species? Perspective regarding the act. A. The act is better despite the economic cost to a community. B. Nations with strong artistic program are less likely to go to war. C. The act unites and enhance communities and nations. D. Focusing on economic benefits of the act diminish the social benefit of the act. C.
Yeah, C. So Spacey, name. So Riley and both talking about the benefits of the arts, the benefits of culture. One's talking more about past, future, and then Space talking about connecting entire communities and nations, enhancing nations. C, number 6, and our same passage for number 7. Okay, and we'll go to Sasha Gay for number 7.
What is the explicit purpose of Riley's letter? A, to persuade the audience to protect the school. B, to entertain the audience with biographical details. C, to contrast traditional and alternative high schools. D, to explain the role of a school in a neighborhood. Is it A?
Yeah. So they both have that's the other thing that we can compare and contrast. Riley, her purpose is very specific to a protecting a school, right? She is persuading, she is arguing for the protection of the school, and she's doing so by with her evidence that the arts, culture are good for the area and good for these students. So they both are using the same type of themes, but for different purpose here. So 7 is A. 8, our same passage again. Nakia, could you read number 8?
Sorry, yes, again. What is the purpose of Spacey's article? A, to describe well-known works of art. B, to persuade readers of the economic importance of art. C, to entertain. Get out. Sorry. C, to entertain with stories about Shakespeare's London. D, to inform readers about fundraising opportunities. And I would say B.
Yeah. So that's where Riley was trying to persuade her audience to save a school. Spacey's is a little broader, a little larger, thinking about readers of to persuade readers of the economic importance of the arts. So, right, both of them are asserting the importance of the arts. That's another way that these things are similar. That's another way we can compare them. Contrasting, though, is a little difference in the purpose. One is to persuade to keep a school. One is to persuade on the economic importance of the arts. So really getting a look here at, how we can compare and contrast these similar passages. And okay, we got the same one again. So number 9, Etta, would you like to read question 9 for us?
Okay. Number 9, Spacey addresses the idea that those who do fundraising for the arts should A, focus on economic as well as cultural benefits of the arts, B, focus on artistic merit alone, C, investigate new types of fundraising, or D, call on local governments to sponsor more fundraising events. A.
Yeah, focus on economic as well as cultural benefits of the arts. Right. So that's largely speaks to that larger theme there for both of them. 9 is A, and we're just rolling right along. We've got the same passage again for 10. So let's see here. It is the same passages, right? Yes. 10, Tracy, how about reading number 10 for us? Tracy?
Yes.
Okay.
How does paragraph 2 of do not close the door on the acts support the main idea of Riley's letter? A. Riley emphasized that a combination of an alternative and traditional school is unacceptable. B. Riley explains that the need of creative and professional students differ from those of traditional students. C. The parallel between the economic choices of the students and staff emphasize the writer's ethical appeals. D. The reference to local businesses provides solution for the problem of how two schools might be reimbursed. The paragraph 2. B.
Yes. So Riley explains that the needs of creative and professional students differ from those of traditional students. Right? She's that first one is saying combine the school. She doesn't want that to happen. Parallels between economic choices of students and staff emphasize the writer's ethical appeals. We don't, she doesn't really mention, students or any expertise, right? An ethical appeal is talking about appeal to expertise, and then a reference to local businesses provide solutions for the problem of how the school might be repurposed, right? So none of that is there, but she does talk about the need for a creative space for these students to learn their arts trade. 11, same passage again. We're just rolling right along. Usually don't have this many questions on the same passage. So 11, Christiana, how about reading question 11 for us?
Number 11. What do both authors believe about the arts and the economy? B. Supporting the visual and performing arts puts a drain on taxpayers. B. Higher price of concerts and theater ticket prevents many from attending. C. Active arts and cultural communities benefit the local economies. D. Support for arts should come from public and private source. Is it D?
It is C, 11 is C, right? Active arts and cultural communities benefit the local economy. So she's, talking about the school. So businesses around that school benefit. And of course, Spacey is talking a more large idea of an economic community. But both have that idea, right? So another way that we're comparing them, that they are overall, right? There is much, much, much more upside to the arts than there is a downside, particularly economically. And same passage. Let's go back to Grace. How about reading number 12 for us?
All right. Which statement best explains why the artist mentions specific artists? Really mentions them to A, show that she knows them personally. Spacey mentions them to show pride in their ancestry. B, prove that young artists should study techniques of famous artists. Spacey mentioned them to show that new art does not depend on old. C, inform readers that people do not appreciate young artists. Spacey mentioned them as supporters of the old Vic theater. And D, serve as example of successful professionals who attended a special high school. Spacey mentioned them to show that art is timeless and important. The D?
Yes, right. Serves as an example of successful professionals who attended a special high school on the side of Riley, and then Spacey missions them to show that art is timeless and important, right? So that's one way you can relate that to everybody. Somebody's going to know those people, and enumerating again, right? By giving, listing out Jennifer Aniston and who was it? Aniston, Pacino, De Niro, that attended a performance arts type of high school. So D is in dog for 12. The last one, Sasha Gay, how about reading 13 for us?
Which word best describes the author's attitudes towards the arts? A, ironic. B, negative. C, resigned. And D, respectful. Is it D?
Yeah, it's D, right? They're both respectful. They both are supporting and promoting it. So a lot of comparisons here. I was kind of hoping, does anybody need me to follow up on any of those answers first
Number
off?
10, please.
10 was B as in boy.
Okay.
This number 1 and number 3.
Number 3 was D.
Number 1.
Number 1 was also D. D as in dog.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I kind of hoped to also see one that was more in opposition to you. So you could see that, because that's more of what you'll see in a writing response. You'll have, one passage that's supporting a particular idea that might be against that idea. And of course, in those situations, you're going to have a lot more contrast, but they might also have some as far as evidence and things like that to think about. So